Hello, everyone. It's TC, and I'm back with you. Thanks for joining me. Today, we're going to talk about the state of the economy and kind of where we're at with everything. So, not one that likes to really be the bearer of bad news or really kind of go to the downside of things, but it is what it is. And I'd much rather just be honest and talk facts and then let the chips fall where they may. So, I've got a couple of things that are really, really working against us right now. Obviously, the inflation is really a big problem. And the reason the inflation is a problem is it's eating up a lot of the disposable income for most of the country. And so when you don't have money to spend on things, you don't go out and buy things, you don't get services, you don't do extra shopping, and then, products aren't made down the line because they're not getting bought. And food is not being bought out at restaurants, and so on and so forth. So these businesses are going to have to start letting people go or not hiring anybody and just trying to weather the storm. And that's kind of like a place where we're at with that. So not exactly the best situation. But the another issue that's really working against us right now is the deficit. And the deficit is insanely large, and it could be manageable if our spending wasn't just plain ridiculous at this point. I mean, we're deficit spending, debt payments over $1 trillion in interest, and that's just not a good thing to have hanging over our heads, because at some point the day of reckoning is going to come up for that. So I know right now with our GDP numbers, people want to look at that and say, oh, look, our GDP is great. And it does look great on paper, but if you peel back the layer of the onion and realize that most of our GDP comes from government spending, you realize that that's not a good thing. And so I know it looks good, but it's not good when you're deficit spending to create your GDP. And that's what we're doing right now to prop up the economy. And, again, the chickens come home to roost at some point. So, that's definitely not a good thing going in our favor. And we also have the job market, which has completely cooled. I mean, cooled about as far as it can cool. You got obviously a lot of layoffs being announced. A lot of companies are, filing for bankruptcy and closing stores. You got a long list of them. And as these people end up finally getting laid off and losing their jobs or not having income coming in, it also impacts the economy in a negative way. And it's one of those things that just kind of snowballs off itself. And so everybody just needs to be paying attention to all these things as the layoffs mount and things continue to, I'd say, deteriorate a little bit, because you're going to want to save your money, because you're going to need it, because it's going to be a bumpy road. I don't know when that's going to happen. It could be tomorrow. It could be in 6 months. But at some point, this is definitely going to happen. There's 3 different scenarios that we're pretty much looking at this point. And that would be a hard landing, which would be a kind of a rough stretch. Then there would be the recession, which is obviously not a good thing at all. And then there's the financial collapse. There are 3 options at this point. The soft landing's out the window. The metrics and the way things are trending has pretty much eliminated that from the equation. So, at the end of the day, I don't want to scare anybody or, really charge anybody up. It's just more or less about helping you out so you're prepared for this, because, nothing is worse than not knowing anything about this coming and then just having it blindside you when you didn't have any time to prepare and, maybe hold off on buying some things that aren't really necessities at this point, because it could come back into play. I know we're having an issue with a lot of the insurance prices rising, whether it's car insurance or home insurance, and it's definitely going to continue to go up. I know we have a lot of drivers out there that are not insured at this point. I think it's 1 out of 7 drivers now is not insured. So anytime that driver gets into an accident and the insured driver has to place a claim, and that just works against all of our insurances because it comes out of our bucket. And and that's part of the issues we're having with the migrant crisis, because there's a decent amount of migrants that are driving without licenses and insurances. And I'm not saying it's a huge number, but it's definitely a contributing factor. I know down in Springfield, I've heard some reports of I forget what exactly the statistic was, but it was pretty ridiculous on how many of the accidents were caused by some of the migrants down there. And then you obviously have the cooling job market. And it's all about supply and demand when it comes to things, when you're talking about like the job market. And so when you add 15 million people into your applicant pool and jobs aren't added to offset that, it means that the wages go down, and it means that it's harder to find jobs and move jobs, because the power is starting to be with the actual employer and not the employee. And that's the challenge that we're working through right now. And so I just want everybody to kind of stay strong and hold it together, because at some point this will get better, but it might be a while, and it might get worse before it gets better. But in any event, I would love to continue this conversation. Please put some comments below if you have anything you want to add in, or you have a nice little spin on all these topics. I would love to hear it. Thank you for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next one.